Hello, everyone. We'll give it just a moment or two for all of us to log in, and then we'll begin. Hello, everyone. I'm Marilyn Geller, Chief Executive Officer at the Celiac Disease Foundation. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this informational webinar designed to equip you with information about the significant research funding opportunity being offered through the U.S. Department of Defense. For the second year in a row, access for funding for celiac disease research has been made available through the U.S. Department of Defense Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, peer-reviewed medical research program, known as CDMRP, PRMRP. Only 57 diseases and topic areas made the fiscal year 24 CDMRP list to be eligible for this funding. We are gratified that celiac disease is again one of them. I'm also ecstatic to share that for fiscal year 23, the first year celiac disease was eligible, $6,675,794 was awarded to 2 celiac disease research applications, with 7 compliant applications submitted. This is tremendous. We congratulate the award recipients and encourage you all to submit your applications for fiscal year 24. Letters of intent are due this May. This opportunity for research to access additional and highly coveted federal research dollars for celiac disease has been successfully realized after several years of work on Capitol Hill by the Celiac Disease Foundation and our committed patient and research advocates, including yourselves. On behalf of the celiac patient community, we would like to extend our gratitude to everyone involved in making this a reality. The CDMRP process is different from what many of you have experienced with NIH. One of the most important takeaways I want everyone to understand from this meeting is this: making this year's Department of Defense list of diseases and topic areas is no guarantee of making next year's list. If celiac disease does not generate compelling proposals that fit the program's mandate this fiscal year, there is no assurance that celiac disease will make next year's list. That is why you've been invited to this webinar. We appreciate that there is a tight deadline for LOIs and final proposals. However, the Celiac Disease Foundation and the patient community we represent need you to submit your best possible proposals to the program this year. That will help us keep celiac disease on this small but prestigious list next fiscal year. Just a word now about logistics. Please note that anytime during the webinar, you may use the Q&A function to submit a question, and Dr. Argue will address them at the conclusion of her talk. Please use the Q&A and not chat to ask your questions. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Catherine Argue to tell you more about this opportunity. Dr. Argue is the Deputy Program Manager for the PMRP and is responsible for the execution of the PMRP program lifecycle, including the annual investment strategy, development of program announcements, application review, funding of awards, and oversight of in-progress research. Dr. Argue holds a PhD in pharmacological and physiological science from St. Louis University School of Medicine. Dr. Argue, thank you so much for joining us today to share information about this important opportunity with our researchers.
All right, thank you so much, Marilyn. Hopefully you can still hear me okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you can all see the slides now. So it's my absolute pleasure to be here today to tell you all about the funding opportunities that we have for celiac disease research under the peer-reviewed medical research program, which is one of the 35 programs under CDMRP, the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs. So you'll notice on your participants list, 2 Catherine Argues here. The second one is actually Jenny Meddert-Young here from the CDMRP Public Affairs Office. So without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and get into the slide deck that we have prepared for you all. But as Marilyn said, I'll be happy to leave some time for questions at the end. You can go ahead and put them in the Q&A box as you think of them. So here's just a little bit of an overview of the talk that I'll be giving today. I'm going to start with an overview of CDMRP as a whole. We'll talk about the program cycle and the review process that's common to all CDMRP programs. And then we'll go into the specifics of the peer-reviewed medical research program, tell you a little bit about the program as a whole. We'll get into the specific funding opportunities that we have for FY24, how you can apply for those opportunities, and then importantly, some tips and resources for a successful application. So the overall vision of CDMRP is to transform healthcare through innovative and impactful research. And I really want to highlight the impactful part of that statement because that's what really sets CDMRP apart from other funding organizations, is that we're not a funding organization that just seeks to fund research for research's sake and to build the entire body of research for the country. Instead, we are very disease focused and very patient focused. So we look for all of the research that we fund to have something that has the utmost translational potential, things that are going to, depending on the mechanism you apply to, either lead to a short or a long-term advancement in patient care options for those that are affected by the disease or condition. So we do this all through our mission, which is to responsibly manage collaborative research that discovers, develops, and delivers healthcare solutions for service members, their families, veterans, and the American public. And the part about service members, their families, veterans, and the American public is very important. That is how military health is defined as representative of all of those groups. So throughout our program announcements, you'll see items talking about relevance to military health, relevance to the military, and it's really important that you note that relevance to the military or to military health is not exclusive just to the service members. We think about their families, the veterans, and the American public as a whole. If you think about our service members, you know, it really speaks to their readiness to know that their families and the rest of the country that they'll be going back home to is safe and healthy. So that gives them the peace of mind that they need to do their job. So there's various ways that, depending on the disease or condition that you're speaking to in your application, that you can think about how it affects these different communities and how that all relates back to military health. All right. So this is our star graphic for CDMRP. It's the who, the what, the where, and the how. So CDMRP was first started in 1992 from a grassroots lobbying effort by a group of breast cancer advocates that went to the Hill and lobbied for funds for breast cancer research. And there was, of course, already breast cancer research happening with federal research dollars, but this advocate group was not happy with how those funds had been spent. They wanted a seat at the table. And so they were fortunate enough to receive an appropriation for Congress. And then they went to various funding organizations to ask who would manage this appropriation, who would fund the research, and importantly, who was willing to give them a seat at the table. And the most obvious places to go were NIH, NSF, and they were happy to, use the money to fund breast cancer research, but they wanted to continue to use their own process. So lo and behold, they ended up at the commanding general of MRDC, that's Medical Research and Development Command under the U.S. Army. And that is how CDMRP was first stood up, is that the commanding general was willing to give the consumers, the patient advocates, a seat at the table in the funding decisions. And skipping down to the how part, that's how our two-tier review process came into play. where we have a two-tier review process. I'll explain it in great detail in a few slides, but it involves consumers at every stage of the review process. And really, we involve them at every stage throughout the program process. So that's something that's very important to CDMRP. And then, as I already said, we really seek to fund innovative and impactful research that is going to have an effect on patients' lives. And we can fund research conducted in institutions around the world. I saw a question pop up in the chat briefly, and it looks like it was marked as answered probably when I put up this slide. So we do not fund just exclusively within the United States. Wherever the great idea comes from that can help individuals with celiac disease, that's where the funding dollars will go. All right, so just a few more hallmarks of CDMRP. I won't go through all of these in great detail, but the first one is really important for you to understand, and that's about the managing targeted research funds that are added by Congress to the DOD budget. So unlike other items under the DOD budget and unlike other federal funding organizations under the federal government, we do not ask for the funds that we are given. They are given to us by Congress, and we stay here as an execution and management agency where we let Congress know that we're ready to manage whatever funds they give us. So all of the programs that CDMRP has, all of the topic areas that CDMRP has, those are all congressionally directed, and the program office has absolutely no say in whether a topic area or a program continues on into subsequent years, and no say in how much funding is allocated to any given program. Because we receive an annual appropriation and direction from Congress, we have basically just that year's funds to focus the congressional intent for that year. And so all of our awards are fully funded upfront. So if you apply for a 4-year award, you will receive all funds for all 4 years right away. You don't have to, continue reapplying for funding on an annual basis. And you don't have to have anxiety about whether or not your next year's funds is coming. So you have access to the full 4 years. You'll work with, our team to manage the grant to make sure you're responsibly, kind of leaving some money and not spending it all within that first year, but you will have access to the full budget upfront, which does offer some flexibility if research moves faster or slower than you initially anticipated. So I also want to highlight our part about transparency and accountability. There's a wealth of information on our website. You can take a look at all of the awardees that have been previously funded under CDMRP. And you can also, very importantly, get success rates for the different programs and different mechanisms. We don't really have an over-encompassing success rate for our applicants that we can give you because it is highly variable depending on what program you're talking about. And within the programs, it even varies quite a bit by award mechanism. But I encourage you to take a look at our website to get an idea of the success rate and also who's been awarded funding in the past. As I said, we're stood up on the shoulders of breast cancer advocates' efforts, and we continue to keep consumers in mind as the true north of CDMRP. So they're involved throughout the entire program process, and they have a seat at the table at both stages of our 2-tier review process as full voting members of our review panels to have a voice in what research ultimately gets funded. All right, so our strategy, we annually adapt to meet congressional intent based on the congressional language that we received that year. Every year, our funding opportunities are publicly announced and also openly competed. So this open and fair competition is really important to CDMRP. We like for all applicants to have the same fair shot at getting our funding. So we don't do individual consultation with an applicant once the funding opportunities have been posted. We won't sit and work with you to tailor your application specifically to that funding opportunity because that's seen as giving a competitive advantage to a single applicant. Instead, we just kind of do these broad informational webinars that are given to large groups of applicants to make sure everybody is receiving the exact same information. And then also our funding opportunities are really dense. There's a wealth of information in there. So everything that you need to know about how to tailor your application should be within that program announcement. I already talked about the two-tier review process. We're going to get to that in more detail, and just we cannot overemphasize the importance of impact. So you're going to see that keep coming up on all of the slides, but it's important for you to keep in mind as you're drafting your applications. As many times as I'm mentioning it in this webinar, make sure that you're threading that throughout your application to make sure that you're speaking to the impact that the research you're proposing will have. So this is the full list of the 35 programs that were given to CDMRP by Congress for FY24 with their appropriations level. You'll see that most of them are focused on a single disease or condition, and peer-reviewed medical, that's the program that we'll focus on today. That's kind of the oddball out, where instead of being focused on a single disease or condition, we have a list of 42 topic areas for FY24 under the program. All right, so I want to circle back to speaking a little bit more about relevance. This slide is really focused on the military relevance piece, which I alluded to at the beginning, with reminding you all that military health is not just about the service member. It also includes veterans, knowing that after their service is complete, their needs will continue to be taken care of, and knowing that their family members and all of their friends and everyone left in the country back at home is safe and that they can complete their mission without worry. So all of this speaks to readiness. So depending on the exact nature of the research that you're proposing, we ask for you to do a little bit of homework and think about statistics, how it affects the military, and how you can speak to that in your application. And we do advise applicants that it might be a good idea to speak with the advocacy groups who are often involved in the lobbying efforts to get a topic area such as celiac disease put under the Department of Defense. A lot of times they have really good statistics and can point you in the right direction with some good language to speak to the military relevance for your application. All right, so now we're going to get into the CDMRP program cycle and review process. So one of the things I want you to pay attention to as we're going through this slide is the timeline. We have a long cycle. The whole thing starts when we receive our annual congressional appropriation, and that is on a varied timeline every year. So we cannot release any funding opportunities until we have a signed Department of Defense bill for that year. And this year there was several continuing resolutions, so we were a little bit delayed. Our timeline varies a little bit every year. Once the funding opportunities are released, all of our funding opportunities require some type of pre-application. It might be a simple letter of intent, a one-pager, and after you submit your letter of intent, you can just move forward with your full application. The letter of intent is not screened or scored in any way. It's used simply for program planning purposes. And the other option would be for the application to require a pre-proposal. Pre-proposals are reviewed and screened, and you must wait until you receive a letter of invitation before you proceed with submitting the full application. But all of them, the pre-application is absolutely required. You cannot submit a full application without having first submitted the pre-application. So all of our pre-application deadlines are coming up here in May. So do not worry, you still have plenty of time to put in a pre-application and make sure that you're not missing those deadlines. We then move into our two-tiered peer review process, still promising. I'm going to get to it in more detail. And then ultimately, there's the funding recommendations. The Commanding General of MRDC has the approval authority on our final recommended for funding list for the year. And then you get into the award period of performance. From the time that the funding opportunities are released to the time that the funding recommendations will come out, it's about a year. And really, if you count the time until you'll actually have the funding in hand, it's probably a little bit closer to an 18-month timeline, give or take a couple of months. So it is a long cycle from application receipts all the way through to finally being notified of whether or not you were successful in obtaining funding. Just something to keep in mind. All right, so here's a little bit more detail on that two-tier peer-reviewed process that I kept promising. The first stage of our two-tier reviewed process is peer review. It's really important to note that we do not have standing peer review panels, since our funding opportunities and congressional intent, the topic areas we have, award mechanisms, everything change year from year. We set up new peer review panels on an annual basis, and that's one of the purposes behind requiring pre-applications for all of our award mechanisms, is so that we can start planning on what types of research will be coming in and set up peer review panels that have the best expertise for those applications that are coming in. The other thing that's a little bit different about peer review under CDMRP is that at the peer review stage, applications are not compared to one another directly. You're given an absolute peer review score. So what we're asking the peer review panels to do is to think about your application in comparison to an idealized application. So it gives you an absolute peer review score. You do receive an outcome, a summary statement that has your peer review score, as well as the strengths and weaknesses comments from the panel. But your score, unfortunately, does not give you really an idea of your relative standing to the other people that applied for the same opportunity. It just lets you know the merit that yours was seen, and you still have to wait to kind of find out whether or not you'll be recommended for funding. You can't always guess from that score because we don't make funding decisions based purely on the peer review score. So after peer review, they go to the second tier of review, which is programmatic review. And that's where they're really going to very heavily look at the peer review scores. They're going to look at all of the strengths and weaknesses that were listed in the summary statements and decide which ones that they like best. But they're also going to add some additional criteria in there and look at the intent of the program, the intent of the award mechanism that you applied to, and also take into consideration how the funds are being spread across, not wanting to put all of the eggs in the same basket. So spreading things between treatment, prevention, diagnosis, those types of considerations do come into play for programmatic review. And important to note that there are consumer reviewers as full voting members on both the peer review and the programmatic review panel. These may be patients, those living with the disease and condition, or they may be caregivers. All right, so again, consumers are the true north. These are the patients or caregivers, those affected and living with the disease or condition on a daily basis. They're involved throughout the peer review process, the programmatic review process, and we also incorporate their input during the creation of our program announcements for input into things like strategic goals. All right, so now we're getting into the specifics of the peer-reviewed medical research program. Our vision as a program is to improve the healthcare and well-being of all service members, veterans, and their families. And we do this through encouraging, identifying, selecting, and managing medical research projects of clear scientific merit that lead to impactful advances in healthcare of service members, veterans, and their families. This program was first initiated in 1999, and it has very broad congressional language. So our direction from Congress is to support research of clear scientific merit and direct relevance to military health in specified topic areas, and then it lists the topic areas. So it is signed into law, that appropriations bill, so it is by law that we fund within and only within the list of topic areas that were given to us by Congress for that year. So this is the list of all 42 topic areas that we received for FY24, and you can see celiac disease up there. The list is in alphabetical order. I do want to highlight the 4 new topic areas that we have for FY24: accelerating aging processes associated with the military, computational biology for precision health, congenital cytomegalovirus, and far UVC germicidal light. And then all of the other topic areas that you see here are ones that have been with the program for at least a year or more. So to deal with such a wide range of topic areas, as well as the coming and going of topic areas from year to year, we take a portfolio-driven approach. So I should say it's really important to note that there's no pre-allocation of funding to any specific topic area or any specific portfolio. It's all based on the quality of the applications that come in. So we have, let me see, 4. 8 portfolios for FY24, and the topic areas are really divided into these portfolios based on where they have commonalities and the gaps that need to be addressed in order to meet the needs of the patients affected by the diseases and conditions represented by the topic areas. So in the case where we receive topic areas that are not a single disease or condition, like sometimes we receive research tools such as proteomics, and this year we have computational biology for precision health. Those types of tools are included across all of the portfolios. And what's really important about our portfolios is that we set the priorities at the portfolio level. This allows us to keep a more consistent strategy for the program where we can track progress from year to year in light of changing topic areas. And it also keeps things a little bit simpler for the applicants, as opposed to having individual goals for every single topic area and trying to juggle through all of that. So we set these portfolio-specific strategic goals with input from key stakeholders, which includes the advocacy groups for the diseases and conditions. And all of the goals are aligned to the continuum of care. So you'll have goals under foundational studies, prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and/or epidemiology. Not all portfolios have goals under all areas. It is by law that you address one of our topic areas, and then we also, as a program, require that you address one of the strategic goals. So you must select a topic area, and then based on whatever portfolio that topic area falls into, you must pick a relevant strategic goal. All right, so I am going to get more into the details of the award mechanisms that we're offering for this year in a couple of slides. This slide is just to highlight that all of our award mechanisms are open to all of our portfolios and all of our topic areas. So there's no variation from award mechanism from one to the other on what topic areas our portfolios are included. So for any topic area, you should consider all 6 of the funding opportunities and see which one best speaks to the intent of the research you're proposing. All right, and this is showing the strategic goals for the autoimmune disorders and immunology portfolio. That's the portfolio under which we're housing celiac disease. We have goals under foundational studies, prevention, diagnosis, and then this continues on to the next slide with treatment and epidemiology. And these are all posted throughout our program announcements, so I'm not going to spend time reading them all. What I want to highlight here is that the goals are meant to be pretty broad, mix and match approach kind of thing. So for any topic area, there should be multiple goals that are applicable and vice versa. All right, so these are the 6 funding opportunities that we have for this year. We organized them by 2 for basic research, 2 for translational research, and then 2 for clinical research. So our Discovery Award mechanism is the first. This award mechanism is really for innovative research. Innovation is the highest scored peer review criteria for this mechanism. It does not require preliminary data, and anyone from the postdoc level and above is eligible to apply for a Discovery Award. It's a 2-year period of performance with a direct cost maximum of $275,000. And it's looking for really a novel breakthrough idea. So not a continuation of an already existing line of research, but something that, if successful, would really lead the field into a new direction, would be what we would refer to as kind of a game changer. So these are high risk, high reward type research ideas. Then we have our Investigator Initiated Research Award with a direct cost maximum of $1 million. We changed this one a little bit from what it was last year. For any of you who applied last year, just take note that it used to be open for all stages of research, from basic all the way through translational. We're now asking that it focus more on basic research. It's going to be those validation type studies. So it does require preliminary data. This can be gathering more research to support your hypothesis and continue to develop an existing concept or idea within your laboratory. Since we limited the Investigator-Initiated Research Award just to basic research, we included a new award mechanism this year called the Impact Award for mature research ideas that are a little bit more advanced than just validation studies. So the Impact Award is applied science. It's looking at taking those basic research ideas and starting to really think about how to translate them into the patient more directly. And so there's a direct cost maximum of $2 million for this, or there is an option to have a partner and receive a direct cost maximum of $2.6 million. However, the partner must be a clinician. So this was one of the ways we thought to help basic research translate into the clinic would be to offer a partnering option to partner with a clinician researcher to help get those ideas of making it closer to near-term impact for patients. Then we have our Technology Therapeutic Development Award with a direct cost maximum of $4 million. We refer to this as our IND-IDE enabling mechanism. It can support other things aside from that, but it's really most commonly used for that, and it is a product-driven award mechanism. So you have to have the product in hand, be able to kind of put a name to the compound that you're working on, if it's a pharmacological, or, we started working on some type of a prototype, if it's a device, if you're working on a knowledge product, it should be, at the stage where you're thinking about, kind of really validating it in some type of a human population, but not quite at the stage of a clinical trial. So for this, we're looking at the conclusion of your Technology Therapeutic Development Award, your immediate next step should be to conduct a clinical trial. So it should be whatever that last stage is in product development that is needed to get to the first in human clinical trial study, or really the efficacy validation study clinical trial. If it is a knowledge product, most commonly that of an IND or IDE. So then we have our Lifestyle and Behavioral Health Interventions Research Award. This award mechanism can be used to support clinical research or clinical trials. It is not applicable to animal research. Sorry, I accidentally advanced the slide. We're back now. So this one is human research only. It can be clinical research. If it's a clinical trial, it should be for a non-pharmacological as exercise recommendations, I should say physical activity recommendations, or nutrition guidelines, things like that. It can include some apps, things that are not going to be regulated by the FDA though. For all of the award mechanisms that I have mentioned thus far, the pre-application type is just a simple one-page letter of intent, and you do not need to wait for any sort of an invitation. You can just, as soon as you have submitted your letter of intent, move forward with preparing and submitting your full application. Then lastly, we have our clinical trial award mechanism. This is going to be for large-scale clinical trials, anything that is FDA regulated for sure, but it can include some of these lifestyle and behavioral health interventions if it's going to be a really large multi-site trial where this direct cost maximum is not sufficient. So there's no direct cost maximum on the clinical trial mechanism. However, it is going to be scored review criteria. So the reviewers will strongly be looking at the reasonableness of the budget. Just make sure that it fits with the research that you are proposing. Again, no animal research included under the clinical trial mechanism. We do have two options there. There's the full clinical trial mechanism, in which we ask that if your study is regulated by the FDA, that you have already submitted your IND or IDE at the same time that you submitted your application. Or I know a lot of institutions will not support individuals submitting an IND before they have funding for the trial. We offer a clinical trial with planning phase mechanism that allows you 1 year and up to $500,000 in direct cost to get all of your regulatory kind of last steps wrapped up before the clinical trial will start in year 2. All right, so this is just a snapshot of the first few pages of one of our program announcements, just to highlight where some of the key information can be found. There's the submission and review dates and times, so you'll get the deadlines for submitting and also know when peer and programmatic review are happening. You can expect to receive notification of whether or not you've been recommended for funding within about a month of programmatic review concluding. pay close attention to the award information section. This is where we go through all of the intent behind that award mechanism. So this is the best place for you to take a look and say, well, I'm not sure. Do I fit under the investigator-initiated award or the impact award? Take a look at the intent, and you should get some good guidance on what this mechanism is really looking for. And then also you can get further information on what the award mechanism is looking for by taking a look at the peer review criteria. That's going to have a bulleted list of the exact point-by-point questions that we ask the peer reviewers to consider. And it is really specifically tailored to that award mechanism and the intent, what the program was trying to achieve, what the outcomes are that we're looking for each specific mechanism type. All right, so this is just showing another snapshot so that you'll see exactly how it looks in the program announcement of how our portfolios with the topic areas and strategic goals are going to show up. Since this is for the Celiac Disease Foundation, I'm showing the autoimmune disorders and immunology one. You'll see that is the portfolio. There's the list of topic areas with celiac disease in the red box there. And then you have all of your options for strategic goals listed there. And that's going to appear the same in all of the program announcements. All right, this is another snapshot of a program announcement. This is from our Discovery Award, actually. And this is just showing you the impact criteria. The example that I want to illustrate with this slide is just to show you kind of the nature of the bullet points. So if you remember, that Discovery Award was that one looking for really innovative research. It's going to ask, things like to what extent the research has the potential to generate preliminary data that can be used as a foundation for future research projects. And for impact, it's looking short or long term. What some of our award mechanisms are going to be looking more exclusively in the short term. So take a look at those specific bullet points under the review criteria. They really should help to shape your application and make sure that you're speaking to each of the points that the peer reviewers will be looking at. Also pay a note to the ordering of the peer review criteria. So for some of our award mechanisms, research strategy and feasibility is not going to be the most important. Actually, for the Discovery Award, innovation is the top scored criteria. For a lot of our award mechanisms, impact is going to be the top scored criteria. So that gives you a further idea of where to really emphasize your points throughout the application. Programmatic review criteria are also listed in the program announcements. Unlike the peer review criteria, the programmatic review criteria are going to be more consistent from one mechanism to another. What I really want to highlight with the programmatic review criteria is actually the programmatic panel. So on our website, I'll be showing a snapshot of the landing page of the website in a few slides. You can take a look at the FY24 programmatic panel, get an idea of the breadth of expertise and different individuals that are sitting on that panel, and that will help you make sure that you're targeting your application to the appropriate audience. All right, this is just a helpful little chart. I shared my slides ahead of time with the Celiac Disease Foundation, so they can send these all out to you. And this is a helpful one to save that has all of the submission deadlines for our various award mechanisms to make sure that you're not going to miss any of those deadlines. All of the pre-application deadlines are coming up, either May 6th or May 13th. And then we have full applications deadlines ranging from end of May to beginning of June to middle of August. And remember that clinical trial one, you do have to wait for an invitation to submit. Those will be going out mid-June. This is just showing a flow of the application process overview. It's important to keep in mind that there are steps for both the principal investigator as well as the business official. All of the pre-applications are going to be submitted in eBRAP, and then the full applications will be submitted to grants.gov if you're an extramural researcher. Our intramural DOD counterparts do put in their full applications directly to eBRAP. However, there's absolutely no competitive advantage to submitting via grants.gov or eBRAP. It's just how their organizations are registered. They all get pulled together before they go through to the review process. And then we do have a verification period, and EBRAP to make sure for the PI and the business official, both to go kind of back through and double check and make sure that all of the correct attachments, all of those kind of little smaller things were addressed. Please note that during the verification period, you cannot edit the budget and you cannot edit the research narrative. So they're just kind of an opportunity for you to kind of double check some of those smaller little attachments, but not really the meat of their proposal. All right, then to end up here, we're going to talk about tips, resources, and strategies for success. I cannot overemphasize enough the importance of reading the funding opportunity announcement. Remember, we don't do individual consultation with the applicant. We put all of the information one-on-one. What we're looking for under each award mechanism should be spelled out very clearly within the award mechanism. Make sure you look at the award information section. Make sure you look really carefully at the peer review criteria, and then make sure you look really carefully at the description of the various attachments, the various sections of the proposal, and make sure that you're hitting all of the points that are specified in the announcement. All right, strategies for success, relevance and impact, those kind of go hand in hand to some extent. You need to make sure that you're speaking to relevance in terms of military relevance, which we spoke about, and also relevance to the topic area. It's by law that we only fund within these topic areas. So if you're not obviously addressing celiac disease, you really need to spell it out for the reviewers. Make it clear why funding dollars for celiac disease should go to fund your proposal. And then also impact. Make sure you're really speaking to how this is going to affect those living with celiac disease or whatever other topic area you might be applying for. For a lot of our award mechanisms, innovation is highly scored criteria. So make sure you look at what types of research are considered innovative and how we're asking for you to address innovation. It might be something that's asking for you to use newer technology, but more commonly, it's not going to be necessarily using the newest and greatest technology. It's coming up with a new idea, something that's going to be a game changer, something that's really going to take the research field in a new direction. So we really are looking for things that are kind of way out of the box when we talk about innovation, not something that's safely within the box, but just sort of doing it within a new way. We want it to change people's lives. Feasibility, especially for the applicants that require preliminary data, make sure that you're addressing that you can do what you're proposing to do. But for those that do not have preliminary data, at least make sure that you're, strongly emphasizing that you have a team in place with the appropriate expertise and that you have the appropriate resources. And then planning and timelines. The DOD is very, very strict when it comes to submission deadlines. We do not have a grace period. So unfortunately, an excellent application that comes in 1 minute past the deadline because the file took a little bit longer to upload than you were thinking, we are absolutely unable to accept it. So make sure you plan ahead of time for, network delays with uploading your files, any other types of technical difficulties that you might have. There's a lot of attachments required there. So make sure that you're planning in advance and have more than enough time to get all of those in by the deadline. The only times that we do offer any sort of a grace period is if there's some sort of a natural disaster like a hurricane or an earthquake where an entire region is without power and thus, would be completely unable to submit for a couple of days. And then grantsmanship. Keep in mind the programmatic panel has broad expertise. Keep in mind that there's consumer reviewers on the panels. There's specific attachments that are really geared toward the consumer reviewers, and you want to be careful that you're not using too much jargon and that you're writing in lay language for those sections, and just make sure that you're clearly explaining things. For a scientific audience, everybody's scientific, but for the programmatic panel in particular, not everyone might be familiar with celiac disease specifically. This is the snapshot of the peer-reviewed medical program page. I alluded to this at the beginning. There's a little button here to see the recent applications recommended for funding. Also on the overall search page for CDMRP, you can search those applications and see the actual abstracts and things like that from previous ones that were recommended for funding. And you can also just search by mechanism on the CDMRP search page so that you can, kind of take a snapshot of what's everything that was kind of funded over in that technology therapeutic development award mechanism over the past, couple of years, and get an idea of whether your research seems to fit with whatever has been previously recommended for funding. You can see our programmatic panel here. And then I also want to highlight under this recent applications recommended for funding, that's also where you can see the success rates for our different award mechanisms and topic areas. If you have not already done so already, I encourage you to sign up to receive email communications. You can do it. It's the same list whether you sign up through the CDMRP website or the eBRAP website. This makes sure that you stay on top of when funding opportunities are released. You'll have the opportunity to select to receive email information just from the programs that you select. So you won't be inundated with all of the emails for all CDMRP programs, just the ones that you choose. All right, and then lastly, I just want to highlight, in addition to this webinar that I'm giving today, there is a whole webinar series on our website. It's a lot of the same information that I'm giving today, but it's packaged in a different way, different speakers, which might have a different way of explaining things. So you can certainly pick up some nuggets of information by taking a look at those webinars. All right, and with that, I encourage you visit the website, read the program announcements carefully, and I'm happy to take a look at answer any questions that you might have. All right, I saw someone was keeping great tabs on the Q&A box as I was going. Are there any that you want me to circle back to and answer live?
I think the one question that came up, I think the one question that came up was regarding international participation in the grants.
Yes, so we can fund internationally. So the applicant can be directly affiliated with a non-US institution. We can fund academic institutions as well as for-profits, and we can fund pretty much anywhere in the world as long as you have a SAM.gov register in the program announcement. You don't have to necessarily have it, just be able to get it.
Okay. Well, thank you again to Dr. Argue for taking the time to share this information. And thank you to everyone who attended today. We anticipate many applications from our research community to help ensure that celiac disease continues to be included in this very important program. We will be releasing a recording of this video and the slide presentation that we will soon share with all registered participants. And again, thank you to everyone for being here today.